live. Hello and welcome.
Hello.
It is a new season of Creative Recharge.
Are y'all ready for this?
No. Why does time keep marching forward? I'm tired.
It's rude. Time is just rude. That's why.
Summer just keeps summering on, huh? Anyway, we've got a really cool season planned. I think y'all are going to enjoy it, and if not, I feel confident that you'll let us know. But no, I'm expecting you all to enjoy this. So today's episode, we are talking about action adventure stories, specifically writing action adventure. I think that from time to time, most fiction writers get to a point where even if their preferred genre or style of storytelling is more just contemporary, or even if it is a genre like sci-fi or romance, at some point most writers go, I want to do something with a bit more adventure, a bit more action.
Yeah.
And then they're like, what do I do now? I'm not used to writing this. And that is why today we wanted to really kind of look at the beats of your quintessential style action adventure. And we're specifically going to look at movies because movies are easy to consume. Let's be honest. Most movies are between an hour and a half and a 2.5 hour commitment.
Yeah.
And they're visually very fun to watch. They're gratifying, but they are essentially just a faster book in many ways when we're really talking about beats. So I just thought we would talk about movies specifically, but it really relates to any kind of writing. So not just screenwriting, but any kind of fiction. Understanding some of the basic concepts with writing action adventure. And no, you do not need to study the fine art of how to write a fight scene in order to be a successful writer of action adventure story. That is essentially, like, honestly, a subgenre. And there's two major styles. I'm just going to go ahead and get that over with and tell you that from my research and from talking with a variety of writers who are known for their fight scenes, there's two major schools of thought of how to write fight scenes. And one is you either act out the whole thing and record a video of it, or record at least an audio of you saying it as you are, fighting a mannequin or some mildly willing participant.
Siblings come in handy for this.
Spouses, a mannequin, doesn't matter. Or the other school of thought is, and this is what I was told by best-selling authors when I asked. The other school of thought is you just find a fight scene that you like from a movie and you copy it. You copy the choreography, you copy the set piece, essentially. Maybe you make some changes, but that's about it. And I have been assured by professionals who were able to pay off their mortgages that these are time-honored techniques. And that most writers who are able to support themselves with their writing do one or the other, and some of them eventually employ both of these techniques in their stories. And that is literally how you do it.
That's what it takes. Because yeah, it's just you're just taking what are the highlights, what are the big points that happen. But it is a lot easier if you have a visual reference or if you have an audio reference.
Mm-hmm.
You've already done it. But yeah, like
But it's mostly just choreography. It's a dance. Okay.
Yes.
So, I don't so that's it. I'm leaving that there. So we're really not going to talk too much about fight scenes after this. In fact, we're not really going to talk about fight scenes much for the whole rest of the season, but there it is. I thought when I was much younger, I thought it would be far more complicated, that I would need to study the masters. And it turns out, no. And that you never want to actually copy a real fight, because real fights are visually not interesting. And I was told that real fights do not translate well to the written word. That's what I was
It's
told.
kind of like if you did a real fight on stage, no one could tell what was going on. Versus, on stage, you really want that choreographed, big, flashy movements, lots of sound, going together and then breaking apart, drama. Because a fight scene is an argument in physical form. And that's how you use it, is you use it as an argument between, two or more people.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if everyone's just yelling at each other, it's hard to tell what's going on, who's made a point or anything. So that's just like, you don't want an actual real fight. Because no one would understand what you're doing. That's why it's a story.
Mm-hmm.
Stories aren't reality. They never are. Because stories make sense.
It's true.
Which is why we are going to talk about fun stories. Fun adventure stories.
So, Tom, where shall we go with this?
Should we start with the one I'm going to think you have, the most fun with? Shall we talk about Raiders?
Oh, dear. Okay.
And our different takes on a lot of the criticisms of this story that people simultaneously love and give no respect to now, which I find fascinating. And I feel like as a note writers should really take is just because something has been critiqued a lot does not mean people do not enjoy it. In fact, the more people critique it, the more often it is a great discussion point and just something people want to read. Because, the one I always hear about the most is kind of like the Death Star contractors debate, is what was the difference Indy made in this entire story? And the answer is he saves. Oh, why can I not remember the character's name?
Which character?
Karen Allen?
Marion.
Marion. He saves Marion.
All right. So I did include a link. But it looks like that link is not going to work because there is a terrible lack of space.
No, when you click on it, it'll still go to it.
Oh, does it? Oh, good.
Yeah.
I was worried that the link wouldn't work. Okay. All right. So I did include the Raiders of the Lost Ark beat sheet link to be helpful for writers. I think when we're talking about a writer trying to write action adventure story, particularly when this is not part of their wheelhouse, this is not their primary area of interest, beat sheets are very useful for essentially being training wheels to keep you on the rails. So you don't go too far off while you're learning the general conventions of how to keep the enthusiasm, the action momentum going without getting bogged down in plot or character development. It's really important because the most important part of an action adventure genre, any kind of story in this genre, is momentum.
Yeah.
You've got to keep the pace. This is the convention of this genre. And so it is perfectly fine to blend genres. But again, you want to keep in mind that if you are making a story with, say, for instance, a romance story, but with action adventure elements, readers are going to expect that there's therefore going to be momentum. Like, this is just the nature of the business here. And so it is important, again, when we talk about understanding genre, of what are readers expecting. You do not want to disappoint readers, because why? They're going to put the book down. They're going to put your story down. They're going to move on. And then they're not going to trust you again for the next story. You definitely want to keep readers' trust. This is so important.
And the other reason I wanted to bring up Raiders is Raiders, to me at least, showcases very well the origins of action adventure, which is its origins are in serialized fiction. It is in across multiple stories. And so it's another reason why I think it's a good also starter genre for newer writers, because the way a good action adventure runs, especially movies, as you'll find, when it's just a pure action adventure, if it's paced correctly, is that the first 20 minutes to 30 minutes is a short story, is a novella unto itself.
Mm-hmm.
And then once you have told this one, we now have the reasons for the main story. And we then spend the next hour to 2 hours doing a full-size version of this story. Because essentially they have expanded the novella short story that they start with at the beginning of the movie into, now we're going to do the same thing, but bigger and longer and in more detail.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the other reason I think action adventure is a good beginner one, is because you have to work out all of these writer muscles we all need to write a good story. So you need to be able to first write a short action story that keeps your reader hooked. And then you expand in that same style to a more elaborate one later on to keep them going. So, we look at indie, and the first couple minutes, we get a little bit of character development. We get a few little conversation and movement pieces of this location, what kind of people are Indy and the people he's traveling with. What are they looking for? What's their knowledge level? We get a little bit of character development. And then we get them exploring, and the big set piece action still doesn't happen until you're 10 minutes in. You get tension. Oh, you get so much tension this first 10 minutes, but you don't actually get payoffs till you're in. And I noticed this with all of the movies, but I thought Indy did it very well, because Indy is Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark is supposed to be an homage to the 30s and 40s serials and action movies. And so it stays with that. And so that was the other reason why I wanted to talk about the action adventure, is I think it's a great early writer's way to figure out, how do you take a short story and make a full-length novel out of it. And the best part, you get to keep the short story and then just continue on. And so it's not as exhausting for new writers, because you've already written a decent amount by the time you then need to take the short story and move it to a larger, more expansive type story. But yeah, as far as what Indy actually does accomplish in this, is he saves Marion. Every time Marion and that Nazi are on screen together, the Nazi's first thoughts is, I'm just going to kill her. Can we just kill her? How about we kill her now? It's like at least 3 or 4 different times this character is just like, let's get rid of her. Let's kill her now. Like, just, wow. I don't know what the personal issues is, but that character's got some issues with Marion. And so if not for Indy, she would have died at the bar.
Mm-hmm.
And then Indy keeps saving her. Because life's hard. Especially when the Nazis don't like you.
Can't you tell there's a depression on?
I mean, you'd almost think that she's Jewish.
Hmm.
Yeah. So do you want to just read the beat sheet for how the story goes, or how they say it plots out? Because this is going to be
Well,
very similar to all action adventure.
I mean, okay. Make it a little bit bigger so that hopefully people can read it at least a bit. Okay.
And this is how you keep your audience hooked and meet their expectations.
All right. Opening image. Paramount Pictures logo fades. We are now in South America in the jungle, where we meet our intrepid archaeologists. Explorers move through the dense jungle. We only capture a glimpse of his silhouette framed by a fedora and whip at his side. But once he steps out of the shadows and uses that whip to knock the gun out of the guide's hands, we understand he is no ordinary hero. I do think I need to point out that this beat sheet appears to be based on the original Raiders of the Lost Ark versus what Lucas and Spielberg re-edited in the late 90s, early 2000s. And I agree with the original edit versus the new edit. I don't lie. The new edit is a bit more confusing. So then the theme is stated. The theme is hinted at when we see Indiana Jones teaching his college students. During the lecture, he mentions that one of the great dangers of archaeology is folklore. The dangers of archaeology, Jesus. Anyway, then his mentor, Marcus Brody, Denholm Elliott, shows up, which, where does this guy, where do I remember him in? Oh, wait. I don't know. He did some children's movies at one point. But the search for the Ark of the Covenant, Marcus warns Indy not to take the Ark lightly. Although Indy doesn't believe in magic, a lot of superstitious hocus pocus. The theme is that there are some powers that man was not meant to wield. As Indy will soon discover, there is truth to the religious stories. So then we have the setup. From the first frame, we come to understand the perils that Jones faces. In the South American temple in search of a fertility idol, he dodges darts, he leaps across pits, he rolls under stone doors and outruns a massive boulder. I mean, you'd think he'd take a hint, but no, not this archaeologist.
No. I mean, sort of the joke is Indy's not the brightest person.
Right? And that's like only the first few minutes. He stumbles into tribe members of the Jovitos, and unfortunately, his archaeological nemesis, Rene Belloc. Paul Freeman has gotten to them first. Belloc declares, "There is nothing you possess that I cannot take," as Belloc steals the idol from him. We also have our save the cat moment. We want to root for Indy because despite his tough exterior, he's an underdog, and surprisingly, he's afraid of snakes. The scene transitions to his college. We get to see a bit of Indy's alter ego, Dr. Henry Jones. He's a popular professor, especially among the female students. Seriously, the eyelet is so weird. It's as a kid I couldn't read it, and I don't just the 30s.
And now as an adult, you wish you hadn't.
Yes, I really do. He lectures them about archaeology with an enthusiasm that makes the audience wish they were sitting in that classroom. No, they don't. No, he's absolutely boring. But he won't be staying to teach for much longer because his friend Marcus comes to the door with news about visitors. So then we have the catalyst. Men who will only identify themselves as being, quote, army intelligence, which is automatically how you know they are not right, have come to Dr. Jones seeking help for something that's top secret. So then we have
Oh, that's so true, though.
I know. Yes, I loved the line from Good Morning Vietnam.
Yeah.
Military intelligence is, what was it?
It's an oxymoron.
A contradiction in terms.
Yeah.
That of like, yes, Army intelligence is a contradiction in terms. So then we get to the debate, knowing that Dr. Jones is an expert on the occult and quote, obtainer of rare antiquities, thief. They question him about his knowledge regarding Abner Ravenwood. Indy admits that he doesn't know much anymore about his former mentor. He's surprised to learn that Ravenwood's name is found in Nazi documents. Jones learns that Hitler is obsessed with archaeology, and more specifically is obsessed with religious artifacts. Ravenwood is rumored to possess the headpiece of the Staff of Ra, an artifact that will reveal the location of the Lost Ark of the Covenant. So some of this is based on, common knowledge about Hitler. Hitler was very much, he thought it was very important to amass all of these cultural artifacts, specifically religious and anything, and to get them out of the public view. Anything that he thought would detract from the supremacy of the Germanic people. And also because he just liked to have it. He was squirreling all this stuff away. And so he used a bunch of military force to obtain cultural religious artifacts that honestly caused the Nazis to lose several battles, because he was taking away military personnel from battles so that they could, package up and ship back to Germany these artifacts. He was not a very good military leader. So let's see. Jones gives the intelligence men a history lesson in the Ark, which is fascinating. Suggesting that it might be in the Well of Souls, which is questionable. If the Nazis obtain the headpiece, they can locate the Well of Souls and therefore find the Ark. So this is the premise. They're actually explaining in novella form what is now going to happen in the whole movie.
Yeah.
So, again, don't let anyone tell you foreshadowing is bad. I'm just going to say this, okay? Look, good stories, popular stories, are stories that the audience or the reader can understand and follow, even if they are exhausted or inebriated. So if it is too complex, if it is too convoluted to follow for somebody who is under the influence of a couple martinis, or who, has only had 4 hours sleep every night for 3 days, then your story is not going to be as popular, because it's just too exhausting to try to keep track of. So this is why one of the things that's important is to give foreshadowing. And so essentially, in this scene, Harrison Ford's character is telling the Army intelligence people, he's pretty much going to tell what is going to happen in the epic action scene of, like, this is the whole culmination of how they're going to find the Ark. He is explaining what is going to happen, even though supposedly he doesn't know what's going to happen. He's just explaining, well, this is how it's supposed to go. And then we're going to see it's going to actually follow this. Spoilers. So anyway, let's see. But Brody summarizes the severity of the situation. An army that carries the Ark before it will be invincible, which, okay. The task now falls to Indy to retrieve the Ark before the Nazis do, for national security. Sure. In the 30s, America was on the side of the Nazis. But okay, sure.
And the other part I like, speaking of foreshadowing, is like we have Belloc's introduction to Indy and the audience. He literally says, "There's nothing you have that I can't take." And that's going to be the theme of Belloc throughout this movie, is he keeps taking things from Indy.
Mm-hmm.
And Indy then has to go get them back. So we're already being familiarized with the behaviors we're going to see throughout.
everything here is what's going to happen. We are essentially introduced. We are toe dipped in as audience. We are toe dipped into what is the plot? What are the relationship structures, between like Indiana and Belloc and the Nazis and that, we're familiarized with all of it now, as well as Abner Ravenwood and his part in this. So let's see. At his house, Indy and Marcus discuss the ramifications of this quest, and he wants to make sure that the museum will be able to get the Ark after the government is done studying it. But Marcus warns him not to take the Ark so lightly. Will Indy be able to find the Ark before the Nazis do? And if so, will it simply be a find of great historical significance or something much more? Magic! Okay. So then break into two. At 23 minutes into the movie, Indy sets off on his journey to Nepal. The plane flight, by the way, I love the transition here in the movie where they definitely give a nod to the comic book style of storytelling, where it's a very much a two-dimensional drawn image of a very old school 1930s style plane flying from America to Nepal, which show me the plane back then that could do it. I'm very curious.
Well, if you actually look, they do point out which is, it goes.
You got to stop in Hawaii.
You got America to Hawaii to Macau, I think, or Hong Kong.
Yeah.
And then it goes to Nepal you do have to do these hops. Mm-hmm. But I mean, this is also very much just in the 1930s movie serial action style as well.
This is a nod to that style. But yes, I absolutely love the cartoony visual image of making a two-dimensional look like moving.
And this is, again, something your audience appreciates, is if you're going to steal, let's be honest, great artists steal a well-known trope and, a story style. Make sure to also just take some of the elements in there as well, so the audience knows it's not coincidence.
Yeah, that you're giving a nod to it.
Yeah.
So, okay. Plane flies across superimposed image of a map. Let's see, while the Raiders March plays. I mean, it is a great piece. And he finally sets foot in Nepal. So now we are at the B story. In Nepal, the audience is introduced to Marion Ravenwood, played by Karen Allen, who is busy winning a drinking contest. As Indy's silhouette appears on the wall behind Marion, she is surprised and seems happy to see him. That is until she punches him in the face and berates him for his past mistakes. Fun and games. After kicking Indiana out of the bar, Marion is greeted by, do I pronounce that Tote? I don't know how to.
Yeah, just Tote.
Tot. A Nazi who seems to have a thing for red hot poker. Marion refuses to tell him where the medallion is. Indy returns and a firefight ensues, ultimately resulting in Marion's bar burning down in the snow. Marion accompanies Indiana.
Insulting.
I mean, what?
Just insulting, your bar burning down in the snow.
You've taken away my livelihood and you still owe me money for this medallion. What a jerk. I mean, seriously, he frankly deserved that punch in the face. Accompanies Indiana to Cairo, where he meets up with his friends Salah, John Rhys Davies. Unfortunately, he also learns that Belloc is there. Salah reinforces the theme, telling Indy that the Ark is something man was not meant to disturb, and that death always surrounds it. Like, what? Okay. A man who has been using his pet monkey to spy on Indy and Marion leads the Nazis to them, and sword-wielding assassins chase them through the marketplace. While hiding in a basket, Marion is taken and placed upon a truck, one that Indy watches explode before his very eyes. While drowning his sorrows, he is brought before Belloc. Indy resents the idea that he and Belloc are the same when Belloc tells him, "I am a shadow, a reflection of you. It would take only a nudge to make you like me, to push you out of the light." I'm like, oh my God. This guy. And whereas
still dealing with their guilt.
I mean, for real.
Essentially, that means that Belloc recognizes that he is not the good guy in a lot of these situations. Mm-hmm. He feels guilt for this.
Indiana Jones believes the Ark is just a historical artifact. Belloc asserts that it's a radio to talk to God. After having the staff headpiece read and analyzed, Indy learns that the Nazis are digging for the Well of Souls in the wrong place, and there is hope after all. He narrowly averts death by bad dates and sets out to use the map room to find the correct site. Why does nobody ever explain the bad dates? It is a complaint I've had since I was a little kid and watched this movie.
Why is this guy trying to kill them?
What is up with the bad dates?
Well, I mean, we see them get poisoned. But it's like, but why is the guy with the monkey trying to kill him?
Yeah, like, but they also kind of brush it aside, like, oh, it's just bad dates. Like, no, dates are not normally deadly. What the hell? Anyway. So at the midpoint, the Nazis tell Belloc that the Fuhrer is not patient while waiting for him to find the Ark and deliver it. Again, that is apparently a historical fact. The time clock indicates that the stakes have been raised. Meanwhile, Indiana Jones arrives at the map room to use the Staff of Ra at a precise time of day, watching with wonder as a beam of light reveals the location of the Well of Souls. Sneaking out past the Nazis, he hides in a tent and finds Marion alive. A and B stories cross as Indy finds victory, but it is a false victory. He must leave Marion behind in the hands of her captors. So then the bad guys close in. The Nazis reveal their plan to use Tote to convince Marion to give. I mean, seriously, what is up with this guy? Every time he sees her, he's like, she has to die right now. To give them information about Jones and his whereabouts. Meanwhile, Indy and Sulla gather a crew of men to dig for the Well of Souls. When they find it, only more danger awaits at the bottom: poisonous asps. To locate the greatest find in history, Indy must face his greatest fear. While he stares into the eyes of a cobra, I mean, that's valid, Marion faces a different snake, Renee Belloc, engaging him in a drinking game similar to the one earlier. She tries to escape, only to fail.
And this is how we avoid the audience talking about hat pulls and Deus Ex Machina writing.
Right, because we were already introduced that Marion has incredibly high tolerance for alcohol.
So it makes sense that she would purposely try to drink Belloc silly.
Yes.
Trusting in her higher tolerance.
Indiana also fails because he and Sulla raise the Ark to the surface. The rope is dropped down. Belloc and the Nazis have found him, and once again, Belloc proves that he can take anything from Indy. Marion is thrown into the Well of Souls, and the way out is covered with a slab. Torches begin to burn out. Venomous snakes emerge from a hollow wall. Determined, Indy crashes a statue through the wall to escape this ordeal. Indian and Marion hurry toward a plane in an attempt to escape. They soon find themselves racing from it as it explodes, but not before a muscular henchman meets a similarly explosive fate from the airplane's propeller. It's gross. Admittedly, and I'm glad though that they don't actually show that kind of violence. I don't think they would have kept it. They would have even had an R rating. I think they probably would have got an X rating back in the 80s for that. Admittedly, making it up as he goes along, Indy sets off on horseback chasing a truck that is carrying the Ark. After a harrowing display of heroics, Indy returns with the Ark, and he and Marion board a steamer. So then we get to All Is Lost. My favorite part of every action movie. All is lost. And if you ever watched Night Before Christmas, you're familiar with this particular song. The Nazis are as determined as Dr. Jones, though, and are not willing to let the Ark slip from their hands. Stopping the steamer, they take the Ark aboard their submarine. They just happen to have one. Along with Marion. I mean, why did they need Marion? Again, what's happening here? Moments earlier, the whiff of death was in the air as a rat struggled and died next to the wooden crate carrying the Ark, a blackened burn mark taking the place of the Nazi swastika. So that we know, we have, again, foreshadowing that there is magic involved.
Mm-hmm. And specifically, it does not like the Nazis.
Yes.
Because note, it doesn't burn anything else. It just burns the symbol on the box.
Yes. Well, at least the Ark understands the Nazis are anti-Semitic. So then we get
it takes it personally.
It is personal. The Dark Night of the Soul. It doesn't take Indy long to decide what to do. After hiding from the Nazis, he jumps into the water and swims to the submarine to save Marion. I mean, my God. And then we break into 3. Once again, the familiar map scene shows the path of the submarine as it arrives at a small island. Indy's journey is almost complete, but he will have to face evil one final time. And then we get to the finale. And within the finale, we have gathering the team. Indy is alone, and his only plan is getting Marion back. He beats up an officer, takes his clothes, sneaking in among the enemy ranks, storming the castle. He gains the high ground, and with a bazooka, he holds Marion's captors at bay, threatening to destroy the Ark unless they give her back. To which, I got to be honest, in the movie, the Nazis are not impressed. They're like, we know you love the girl. So then the Hightower is surprised, but Belloc knows Jones all too well and calls his bluff. Jones is captured, tied up with Marion to a pole as they stand at the mountaintop. Belloc and the Nazis open the Ark. At first, it seems that it is filled with nothing but ancient dust. But the sky soon erupts with flashes of lightning, and spirits emerge from the Ark. So then we get to dig deep down. Indy must now determine whether or not he believes in the stories of the Ark's power. He tells Marion to keep her eyes shut no matter what happens. They are about to understand that man was not meant to wield this power. So again, we're getting a callback to the beginning of the film. Remember, all of this was foreshadowed, so the audience, the readers, are prepared. Nothing is a surprise, because drunk and exhausted people don't like total surprises.
I mean, we even see that at the very beginning when they try to take the fertility idol, in that it protects itself.
Mm-hmm.
There are traps set up if you try to take it by force, and it will attack back. And so we just see this throughout. Of all of these things are foreshadowed.
Yes.
So the audience is fine. They are familiar.
No, yeah, none of this is a total surprise. So then we get to executing the new plan. Fighting any urges to open their eyes, Indy and Marion listen to the screams of the men as the angel of death destroys them. Soon it is over. The Ark is closed. The power is contained once again. And then we get to the final image. Back home, Indy probes the Army intelligence officials for information on where they took the Ark. They refuse to tell him. And as he leaves, he tells Marion that they have no idea what they're dealing with. The final scene shows a man rolling the crate containing the Ark down an aisle. And as the scene pans out to a wide shot, we see that it is a massive warehouse full of similar crates. And we are left to wonder what else could be lurking there. I do not know why they have written a Rafflecopter giveaway, but okay. There is no Rafflecopter giveaway in the movie. Hi, Maggie.
Hey.
And so I just want to go over, like, if you look at that, that's the basic points. Like, if you just follow the the numbered Bolden sections, if you just plug that in for a story, you will be exercising the storytelling of a basic action adventure. It can be anything. It doesn't have to be archaeology. Let me tell you. I've known too many archaeologists to understand this is absolute work of fiction.
It is absolutely. But as far as action adventure goes, it's a great example that you can really just take all the beats, take every time there is an action point, and put it into your story. You'll make a great action story, because the part it gets really well is that it is kind of like a tennis match, in that they keep gaining and losing something throughout, and it's always done through action that this changeover happens. Indy figures out, I mean, Belloc is already ahead at Egypt digging it up, and they've got, the medallion. And so they're already digging, so they've already gotten ahead of Indy. But then Indy figures out, oh, but they're digging in the wrong place. And then they get the Ark, because Indy loses it. Then Indy regains it in the truck. And we see this it's bouncing back and forth constantly. Who has ownership of the Ark, and who has control of it, and who's pursuing who. And that is action. That is the action movie style, is it needs to go back and forth. You can't just have the hero always have the object of need and is always just being chased. You need the hero to lose it on occasion to show their fallibility. And just like you can't have the bad guys always possessing something, because then it shows that why would you believe the hero even has the ability at the end? It's exhausting to go that long a story without any relief. You can't just have a roller coaster that goes entirely up and then drops at the end, or entirely down the entire way and then pulls up at the end. It's not that exciting. It's boring, and it's exhausting to watch it. Versus what we want a tennis match where it goes back and forth. It's a wrestling match. Who's on top, who's losing, who's gaining, and it's never certain till the end. When we finally see the credits, and that is what keeps people interested, is that going back and forth. If Indy always had the Ark, if the Nazis were always clueless till the very end that they gain in, it's like that's not a very exciting or interesting story.
Yeah. Part of action adventure is you're never quite sure who's going to win till you get to the end. And even after you're familiar with the story, it's still this back and forth, back and forth. We see something similar socially in romances between the two, the love interest and the protagonist, where they are close, then they're apart, then they're close, then they're apart. We actually see a kind of similar, which I think is why romance does blend pretty well with action adventure stories. It's because both genres have this bounce back again and again, so you're never quite sure how it's going to end and whose ball the court is going to be in. And so both genres are used to this, and so they blend pretty well. Versus with science fiction and fantasy, it's not necessarily. Although, of course, you can have science fiction with plenty of action adventure in it. Hence Harry Harrison's Stainless Steel Rat series. And you can definitely have that with fantasy as well, of course, the entire Dungeons and Dragons kind of genre of movies and books. But again, it is just like with romance of a will they or won't they, you get that with action adventure as well. You get a will our hero or heroine win or won't they? We don't know, because there's somebody who's also playing keep away. And that in order for this kind of genre to work, they need to be relatively evenly matched. So in other stories, you may notice so for instance, in sci-fi, for instance, with Doctor Who, one of the things you'll see happen when the Doctor is too overpowered for maybe, say, a terrestrian villain, just an earthling with a desire for power, is they have to take away the Doctor's TARDIS, or they take away the sonic screwdriver, and he can't get to the TARDIS. So maybe it's fallen into a volcano, whatever. The TARDIS will be fine, but the Doctor cannot access the things that give him his normal edge. And so now he's just a man with two hearts, needing to convince a bunch of humans to help him. And that is where this works. So if you're using a character you've used before, you really have to look at who is their opponent, and is their opponent evenly matched, or are you going to have to augment one or the other character to make this look to the reader approximately evenly matched? Because if it's not believable, they're not going to buy into it. Because again, what as writers we're really looking for is we need the readers to be willing to give us a suspension of disbelief. There is no fiction that is not, at some level, a little absurd.
So, instead of Indy versus the Nazi Antiquities division, it's actually an Indy versus Belloc, who's being supported by Nazis in general, and Belloc tells the Nazis where to go.
And also that Belloc knows Indy very well.
Yes.
The Nazis, even the Antiquities division, would not necessarily know Indy's little tips and tricks that he's used to employ. But Renee Belloc is used to all of Indy's shenanigans and already comes with essentially a lot more awareness of, okay, this is how Indy likes to get out of spats. This is how Indy likes to sneak into things, and so on and so forth. So you have to keep an eye out for this because this is his style. And Renee is already very familiar with Indiana Jones.
And so that is how we more even it out. Of instead of it being like an entire military division, it's a leader who's just, delegating stuff, but they don't really know the character. So they are obviously going to be weak to that character's behaviors.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's how we even it out a bit more. Versus if it's just impersonal, you would more likely just be like, if they see Indy, they try to kill him. And there's not a lot of give and take there.
Mm-hmm.
versus Belloc. Renee wants to keep him alive because he wants to prove to Indy how much better he is. It
Mm-hmm.
is all about ego. And again, also why Belloc is doing his best to keep Marion alive, because Belloc owes a lot of his skills to her father.
And also, I think there's something there.
Yeah, it does seem like there's something there, but it's just, it wasn't well
It seems
filmed.
like there's not really a love triangle, in that Marion recognizes that Indiana Jones really took advantage of her at a young age,
Mm-hmm.
to manipulate her and thereby manipulate her father. Versus Renee is actually just interested in her as a grown woman and not as a former child romance. So again, it's something to like think about, of how do each of these characters relate to each other. Renee is into Marion, but he's also interested in showing Indy up. He wants to prove to Indiana Jones, to Dr. Henry Jones, that he is nobody special. Now, why is this? I assume it's because Ravenwood, essentially mentored both of these young men. And these are like siblings sparring for their parents' approval. Even though the parent is now dead, the sparring is not over, because they're still trying to prove to each other that, daddy loved me more.
Mm-hmm. And you can definitely also tell that the people who wrote this were only familiar with the action adventure serials. They weren't familiar with the more modern um, improvements and updates.
Mm-hmm.
As Gloria kept pointing out, that like there's not a lot of sass being done by the
Yes.
characters, essentially pointing out the thoughts the audience is going to have.
Right. Okay. So there's this scene, y'all. If you watch this movie, which I believe it is streaming on Disney Plus, there is a scene toward the end when Indy and Marion are tied to a pole, and there is Renee Belloc in high priest outfit, and it is so over the top ridiculous. It is. It is like, what is this? This is not how Jewish priests dress. This is, as Tom pointed out, this is like a grade school idea of how priestly dress is. And I'm like, why did Indiana Jones not, turn to Marion? They're tied to the pole and go, I don't know why Renee is dressed like some Mayan priest. She's like, is he really dressed like a Mayan priest? Nah, but I mean, like, he looks kind of like it. Of like, there should be some sass there, because look, these are two, Indiana Jones and Renee Belloc are rivals. And the one thing I can honestly tell you, having worked in academia, is academic rivals are so off the cuff sassy about each other. They will make comments to their friends about whoever's picture on the back of the book, their author picture, or the book cover, or like pictures of them in their book, about how they look ridiculous at the dig site. Like, you could tell this man has never done a day's digging in his life. Who eats potted shrimp in an Egyptian dig? Whatever. I've heard these lines. These are real lines real academics have said. So again, I just want to point out, like, where was the sass? Honestly, Indiana Jones and Renee Belloc should be giving personal digs to each other every time they meet, because that is, in fact, what academic rivals do. They are
Yes.
sassy bitches. And like, look, nothing has changed in academia in like, what, 500 years? And nothing is going to change. Men will always be sassy to each other in an academic setting. Like, this is just the nature of the world. I've come to accept this. And so where was the sass? That frankly, the script needed to be punched up. It needed to have more of these like kind of drag reading each other to filth at the library. This is they missed some really good opportunities. I would have liked to see Indy make some digs, and I know Rene, a Frenchman,
Oh yeah.
he would have digs.
And also, this is what happens when you don't do much consultation with people in the fields you are writing in. Of it is another real shortcoming of this movie that you will hear a lot of complaints about. Of like, this is not how archaeology is done.
Oh yes.
Indy is a pure, fortune
I
grabber,
have
robber.
dragged Tom to more than a few archaeological digs in my life because I was heavily influenced by this movie, because my father was heavily influenced by this movie. And so I have dragged Tom. I have gotten plenty of invitations to archaeological digs.
Which are
And
fun.
I mean, they are, well, if you like dirt, they're fun. It turns out I'm not into dirt, and I just, also, I'm not into sun.
That part, yeah, you're really not.
I burn. I'm a delicate flower, and I burn, and I am not into that. I don't like this, that the sun is mean to me. But nevertheless, I've dragged Tom to more than a few archaeological digs that I've been invited to, because it turns out that particularly men and women who get into archaeology really want an audience. And so they are happy for professional photographers to come anytime and take pictures of them being smashing in dirt. That's what I've learned.
No.
And
here's the part that surprised me about those digs.
okay.
For all of the fantasy that Hollywood makes about archaeology, archaeologists, and all that, there's one thing it turns out they do get correct about archaeologists.
The ego?
The fashion.
Yes.
I have seen so many archaeology stereotypes dressed willingly exactly as they would appear in a cartoon or live action movie, of like, oh wow, no, they really do just dress that way. That is the outfit. Those are the different models of archaeologist.
Also, Tom knows me, and I'm the kind of person that will ask every archaeologist and archaeological student, so which movie or TV show got you into archaeology? Because while all children, or most children, experiment with digging in the dirt in childhood, most of them don't go, you know what, this could be a career, without having watched a movie such as Raiders of the Lost Ark or various TV shows. Although one person told me the Wild Thornberries influenced them, and I didn't even know the Thornberries did archaeology, but okay.
Yeah,
I thought they
mostly
did
anthropology, but
yes,
they do a
that's what
little
I
bit of
thought.
archaeology.
I thought they did anthropology, but okay. Yes, I knew somebody who told me it was the Wild Thornberries that got me into this, and I'm like,
and that's the outfit they wear.
Yes, that is in fact the outfit they wear. So yes, archaeology pretty much is only the industry it is currently because of movie and television. Truthfully. So just something to think about. But like truly, to make archaeology sexy, you really have to work it. Because yeah. Anyhow, shall we do our first little sprinty sprint?
Yep.
Now is a wonderful time to make sure you have something to drink or a snack. And when we come back, what would you like to discuss, Tom? Do you have any preferences?
I was thinking about True Lies.
You want to talk about True Lies? Cool. We're going to talk about True Lies and how I think it is a better successful action adventure story versus Raiders of the Lost Ark. I know, I said it. I love them all, but to be perfectly honest, I love True Lies more. It turns out I don't really like Raiders of the Lost Ark if my father hasn't edited it. So, because Dad, again, when his edit of Raiders of the Lost Ark was, he really streamlined it, and he took out some of the superfluous and some of the scenes. He clipped scenes that they were dragging, and that was very helpful because, yeah, some of them, the exposition is unnecessary, and honestly, the editing just needed to be tighter for it to keep the momentum.
Yeah,
it had a hard time. The original Raiders of the Lost Ark and the re-edited really drag in certain spots, and it kind of ruins the fun of the genre versus True Lies, for the most part, seems to keep it.
Oh, there's a hot take, Glory.
Yes, Mr. and Mrs. Smith was Real True Lies too. Yes, Tom was literally talking about this yesterday. So anyhow, we will see y'all in just a few minutes. Me, 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 me. Me, 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 me. Me, 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 me. Me, 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 me.
Welcome back.
Hello, hello. How's the beef and chicken in the smoker?
It's going. It's probably got another hour
Mm.
since it's being slow roasted.
Num, num, num. All right.
Yes, now on to True Lies. One that plays the tennis game better. Although if I have a critique, it's that True Lies is a little smart for regular action adventure stories. But I mean, that is sort of James Cameron.
Mm-hmm.
And also speaking of something else I wasn't expecting till Glory was reading articles about True Lies, but now I feel like I have to bring up and we have to discuss. Are there's a few articles calling True Lies misogynistic, and I definitely feel like it is. And it's like, wait, but it's James Cameron. I don't think James Cameron really understands misogyny. If you look at all the movies and stories he does, yeah, he does still tend to put the men in more perilous situations than the women, but usually the women are just as strong. They just get given a little bit different roles.
Mm-hmm.
Now, does True Lies have misogynistic actors? I mean, characters who act misogynistic? Absolutely. These
Yes.
are tropes of those characters.
Mm-hmm.
But the story itself is not, because the characters being treated misogynistically do not take it as a
Yeah,
given, or that this is just the way things should be.
they do not accept it as their due.
Yeah, I mean, the evil female character Juno Skinner, played pretty well by Tia Carrera,
Oh, I thought she did a great job.
um, is not only shown to be incredibly competent at her job
Mm-hmm.
and is very highly talented and skilled,
She's.
but
I think
she
she's
does
got a
not.
doctorate
Yeah,
in ancient Persian art or something to that nature.
yeah,
Like,
like
she defended her dissertation.
yeah,
So
and her response to being slapped by Salim
yes.
is to just look, grin and bear it, and just have that look of, I am going to take even more money from you and never deal with you again, kind of like. But it's not a, oh, I'm so sorry, I won't do that again.
Mm-hmm.
It is not in any way kowtowing to his behavior. It's more of she's putting up with it because he's got money
Mm-hmm.
and she doesn't have those kind of ethics that says there's a problem with what she's doing. We do see it later on, though, when he destroys the antiquities that she
Mm-hmm.
snuck the weapons into the country with, and he just
Mm-hmm.
destroys them. We see how upset she is there, and essentially you are breaking our deals.
Yeah.
But like, we don't have her, doing this because, she loves Salim. She has been put under his sway by his strong animal magnetism. She couldn't give any cares whatsoever about him, other than he's got a lot of money that she can make off of him.
I think both Juno's character and Helen's character, they do exercise agency and autonomy. And we see that both of them deal actually with quite a bit of violence aimed at them, in part because they're women,
Mm-hmm.
but neither of these characters accept the violence against them as something they deserve or is their due or is even just socially acceptable. Both of them, every time they encounter any kind of violence, including just verbal violence, they react very obviously. They are not okay with this. And we then see that they essentially both figure out what to do next. And that if they don't change their actions, they instead, their characters are given an opportunity to explain to another character slash the audience. We see that both with Juno and Helen explaining why they're putting up with something, for instance, including we see that when Helen realizes it's Harry, her husband, who has dragged her into all of this espionage BS by tricking her into thinking she was going to go to a federal prison if she didn't cooperate. Like, oh, she is mad. And she is not okay till he has saved her life several times.
Yeah.
Like, it's not, oh, well, you saved me, so it's all fine. It's like, oh, no, she's still mad after the first time he saves her life. She is ticked off. And it is only, after several more times that he saves her life that she's like, all right, well, we'll see about working it out. That sort of vibe, which I think is valid.
Yeah.
Again, these are not female characters that just take abuse or that think that they are, entitled to be abused. They absolutely do not. They do not accept that. And I agree with it. Now, also what I came across was the controversy about how Muslims were portrayed. And the criticism was specifically about showing unshaved Middle Eastern men, which I have to be honest, I was like, wait, what? Because what I remembered of most of the male characters of, that were part of this Salim's group and other terrorist groups, I did not remember them being unshaven, honestly.
Yeah.
So when I rewatched the movie, when I watched, because I haven't watched the movie in years, when I rewatched the movie, I was like, they show Salim at home unshaven, which is like every man I know, like when they're off the job, when they're home for a couple weeks, they all let their beards grow out, and I'm like, I don't know that is really showing, the quote
Versus
unquote
all the
mad
other
Arab, the mad Arab stereotype, which is toxic and a problem, and it doesn't originate from H.P. Lovecraft, but it definitely got a lot of legs from Lovecraft and what's his name who took over Lovecraft's copyright. I can't remember his name, but you know which one I'm.
Yeah.
And again, we do want to be careful in our stories about who we make the villain and why we think they are a suitable villain. The real issue with True Lies, it came out in 1994. It was the first movie in a 6-picture deal that James Cameron signed with 20th Century Fox, which then is what he signed all of this so he could get Titanic made, because he desperately wanted that submersible documentary he wanted to make of the Titanic. And this was how he got 20th Century Fox to pay for all of that. And then the rest of his 6-picture deal, apparently he's still doing with Avatar movies. So, I mean, good for him. It must be nice to be crazy rich. But so anyway, but the real issue with True Lies and the stereotype of the Muslim terrorist is the worst part is that actually played out in America with 9/11.
But when True Lies came out, it was actually as a way to change from it always being Eastern European Soviets being the bad guys and being the terrorists. They were just trying to go for a change. They just didn't know how things would then change in less than a decade. Which is why they never made an actual sequel, because it's it's no longer appropriate to do that type of story.
Yeah, they were apparently in pre-production when 9/11 happened, and it was like, well, that is the end of that.
But yeah, Salim's the only one who's unshaven. Everyone else has very manicured facial hair.
Or they are smooth.
Yeah.
Most of the men are smooth. Also, I'd like to point out that what they did do is Faisal is another, Arab-coded character, but he works for the federal government and is literally on Harry Tasker's team. And his loyalty and his competence are absolutely never questioned. And we see that in that he is the one who is sent in as a cameraman to go save Dana Tasker when Selim kidnaps her. So Faisal is trusted to be the one to go save her, and he really does try. You know, it's a lot of guns involved. No, I'm just saying. But again, Faisal is also as an Arab coded character, and we don't question his faith being too faithful or anything like that. There's none given to that. He gets lines. He is not just merely a set dressing character. He's not an NPC. He gets his own lines because we see Charlton Heston with his eye patch dress Faisal's character down, which is kind of wild.
And Faisal gets to give like the best response to Charlton Heston of like, why do you think he's called the Sand Spider? It's like, because it sounds scary.
It is a great line because it sounds scary. They just pick these names because they sound impressive. It's not for any good reason. So, and I thought that was actually well done. And I remember that controversy at the time in the mid-90s. And it's something that our family talked about. Of like, but Faisal is also Arab. And they're not saying, and like, they don't call Selim's character the Mad Arab or any of those other terrible stereotypes. They're not referencing like, oh, well, he's Muslim. Like, no, it is that he is an extremist, which there is a difference between reasonable people and people who think violence is the way to solve problems.
And that their religion gives them an excuse for doing this.
Right? I mean, we see Juno does not accept this either, especially when he's destroying ancient antiquities. Like, nobody is agreeing with Selim except his yes men, who all really appear to be himbos. I'm just saying. But I do think we needed to at least make reference to these controversies that True Lies has always had, and that from the start of the movies coming out, I've disagreed with.
Yeah.
And I certainly, like, I remember we even, you remember when we lived at that one apartment complex in the late 90s? We had a copy of True Lies, and we had neighbors who, I want to say they were from Syria, but I'm actually not sure now off the top of my head. And I asked them if they would be interested in borrowing our movie because we were curious to see if they felt that it had anti-Islam sentiment or if it was just that these extremists. And they said, yeah, sure. Well, we had it on VHS. They said they'd borrow it and they'd let us know what they thought because we were genuinely interested. But yeah, it's probably not appropriate for little kids. And I warned them.
Little daughters.
There's like tango dancing in there because they're like, we don't want to watch if there's like lots of sex stuff. Like there's tangoing, and then we did describe the scene where Helen is supposed to plant this recording device by a phone by giving a sort of striptease, but she only, is down to her underwear, and it is not see-through or anything. And they're like, okay, we'll watch it. And I was like, honestly, you can just fast forward that part because it's just a dance. And it's kind of funny because at one point the recording device falls out of her bra and she has to like act all sexy while getting on the carpet to get it and put it back in her bra so she can plant it. And it's funny. And so originally they were going to fast forward through that, but they were like, yeah, it was actually really funny. Of just watching her do physical comedy when it's supposed to be sexy. Like, it's supposed to be sexy, but it is not actually sexy. Although, of course, Jamie Lee Curtis has a great body. But, yeah, like, the wife told me later, like, I watched it. She's like, I wanted to see what is, like, this scene, And she was like, you're right. It's not actually that sexy. It's just hilarious. So she's like, oh. And she did the face, and that's how I knew she had actually watched this scene. But yeah, they also, now that is not to say that like one family is like the spokespeople for all of Islam or anything ridiculous like that. But we really were interested with what do immigrants from predominantly Islamic countries think of this. Do they also feel that like it's saying bad things about Islam, or merely saying bad things about people who think violence is okay? Which, as I pointed out when I told them, I was like, I was pretty sure the Quran is very clear about don't be violent with people, like it's not cool. And they're like, yes, that is our understanding as well. I was like, okay. So they watched it and they were like, yeah, I did not. But that's Salim. He is bad. Like, they were so cute. But they were like, but and the father said, I did call my brother and tell him he should definitely get a copy and watch this movie. Like, I thought that was really adorable. But yeah, they also did not feel that it was like saying anything about Islam or Muslims in general, but saying that violence is not cool, and particularly trying to plant a dirty bomb in a country is bad news. Don't do that. That is like, as the husband of this couple pointed out, he stole the man's daughter. Like, that is not good. And he said Muhammad said some things about this. Like, you can't say. And he was very upset that this character Salim was claiming to be very religious when he's destroying ancient antiquities, and he's also, stealing people's daughters. Like, he's like, the Quran is very clear about these are bad, and here he is. I'm like, see, that's what I thought. I thought they were, if anything, saying this man is not as devout as he claims to be, and that this is part of the problem, is he's like a red herring for this faith. And so again, like, I think that our family may have been responsible for like at least an entire town in another country watching True Lies. I mean, as I said, even the sexy scene was not actually sexy because it's hilarious instead.
I mean, bravo. I mean, Jamie Lee Curtis definitely worked out for that role.
Oh yeah, but oh my god, she's so good at physical comedy. It just was very enjoyable.
But yeah, if anything, the question is, why does a legal secretary look that fit?
Right? A legal secretary and a software salesman. Excuse me, why are these two people like? And they never once mentioned the gym. And they obviously don't seem to have a gym at home. How do they have these bodies? I have notes. So, but anyway, that is like all the side step comments about True Lies. And I figured I should go ahead and mention it because True Lies is definitely part of my childhood. I've watched it more than a few times, but I've also took the criticism seriously of, are these valid criticisms or are these sort of misconstruing? Like, I don't think it is inappropriate to gloss over that women experience violence, let alone violence that's specific to women. Like, that is a real thing. And so claiming that in this espionage world, women don't experience violence, like, that's ridiculous.
Versus instead, we see Helen Tasker multiple times in situations where, at least from her perspective, she is literally being assaulted with intent to do further to
Oh,
her.
yes. When she takes her feet and pushes Bill Pullman's character, Simon, away from her when she's like, no, stop. And he doesn't stop. So she like literally gets her feet in between him and kicks him away. Like, yeah, you go, girl. She ain't gonna take that crap from him.
Or when Arnold, pretending to be, a target, starts kissing her, her response is like, this is not what she signed up for, and whacks him upside the head with a phone.
Which phones back then used to have a lead disc in them.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm surprised he didn't have a concussion, quite honestly.
But it's not that this stuff doesn't happen, but we do see that the character, on the other hand, handles this stuff. This is not right. This is not something I should accept.
Yeah, they guard their boundaries, and that matters.
We even see that with the daughter.
Mm-hmm. What key? Run, girl.
But
like,
yeah,
she too understands. Excuse me, I am not here for you to like nuke my country. It is not okay.
But yeah, and And also, speaking of the sass and being there for the audience, this one was definitely punched up more. And so another thing I appreciate versus a lot of like James Bond type movies where we're just supposed to accept that this is okay for government personnel to do.
Mm-hmm.
In this one, when Harry takes, several, uses his position to then spy on his wife and to, pull all the stuff,
Mm-hmm.
his partner's immediate response is, do you know how many laws we're breaking and how long you can go to jail for this? That this is not okay, that there's a real problem with what he's doing.
Mm-hmm.
And he essentially blackmails his partner into go along with this or I will tell your mistakes. Sass is not only for levity, but to also address seeming plot holes in your story that are not actually plot holes.
Mm-hmm.
Like to go back to me, in Raiders of the Lost Ark, as a child, I thought there was a plot hole where now that I'm older, I know there isn't. With Indy getting on the submarine and staying on the submarine the entire way across the Med. But now as an adult, I know that subs, especially World War II subs, did not actually submerge unless they were trying to go stealth because it's so much more energy intensive versus just going as a regular boat. So yeah, they would have stayed surface the entire way across the Med. So Indy could have done that without a problem. But as a kid, I'm like, it's a submarine. It goes down underwater. Indy could not hold his breath for that many hours, let alone days. What is this ridiculousness? Have sass is a great way to talk to the audience without directly looking at the camera.
Mm-hmm.
What are we actually seeing in these scenes? And how are these characters really thinking and acting? So, like, when Simon is claiming credit for something that Harry had done the previous day or two,
Mm-hmm.
we again have, Tom Arnold, going, he's claiming credit for your stuff. Can you believe him? And then look, come on, you have to admit he's a used car salesman. This is ridiculous. Oh no, we still have to kill him. No, but you have to admit, from an outside perspective, this is funny. Just having the audience views spoken for to know
Mm-hmm.
that they are not that this is not a weird reality, that this stuff is considered status quo and just to be
Mm-hmm.
expected. We
Yeah, I
see Helen,
appreciated that nod of this is not acceptable in America to wiretap your wife
and
with
even
federal resources. Like,
and
no.
when they start pressing Helen about her sexual activities um outside of marriage, her response is to get violent of this is not appropriate questions.
Mm-hmm.
Of again, she is raising her boundaries about this. Of the showing that these are not acceptable boundary crossings, there are responses to it. And I think that's part of why we enjoy this so much. Is because these characters feel a bit more real.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, even the horse looking scared and wide-eyed when Arnold's character is like, we're gonna jump from this building across a 4-lane road to another building into a pool. And the horse is just like, no, nope, not making that. Stop. You're crazy. Horses have self-preservation too. Again, it actually feels like a very real world.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's something
Even
that,
the horse has autonomy here, Tom.
yes. And like that is something I do, I think can be said well about James Cameron's storytelling style,
Mm-hmm.
is that he doesn't rely on boundary crossing and passivity. Eh, passivity? Something. Um,
Passivity.
yes, passivity of other characters for boundaries to be crossed for the story to progress. He uses it as, genuine, how would people respond in this and how can I still get the story going in the direction I want? Of so that it does, so we don't have that suspension of disbelief trespass of it's no longer believable. For the most part, True Lies is very believable. Now, survivable, I don't know if I'd call it that. There's a lot of scenes as like, how are they still alive? But you can see people acting this way. I totally believe that these are the responses, even the safety and how they would figure this stuff out. Of like, how does Salim figure out, Harry's family? Well, Harry lives there. So Harry doesn't have as much anonymity here as he does when he goes to a location separately. And so that's how, we up the ante, is because it's one of the rare times he's doing work where he lives. And so, yeah, it's actually more danger, not something he has actually made allowances for to increase his safety of his family. And we even see it foreshadowed how much Helen and Harry do not really talk to each other. They just talk at each other. They mostly ignore the other person. I love when Harry asks Helen about her day when he knows she has been with Simon. Essentially, how are you going to lie? And she lies in almost the exact same way Harry just lied to her earlier about his international trip. She speaks almost the exact same way.
Yep.
Showing how similar these two characters are. They just have slightly different jobs. But you can't fault one because they're both doing the exact same thing. So who is actually in the wrong here? And it's like, oh, this marriage is messed up. And I think that's part of why people really enjoy it so much and why it's still watchable even now. Is these characters are all believable and realistic and exciting at the same time. And several times of like, you go, girl. Yeah, that's going to leave a mark. I mean, who is it? Does Helen punch Celine or Juno with her wedding ring?
Juno. She leaves a mark on her cheek.
Like, again, just showing Helen has her boundaries that she always holds and doesn't let other people cross. Even when, she is endangering her own life. But yeah, we still see those same elements in the action adventure we saw on the beat sheet for Rage of the Lost Ark. We see that little mini story at the beginning of what is, Harry's normal job. And how does Harry approach this, hence the tango. And it's this little short story first to kind of give you a sense of what kind of action story this is going to be. And then we see all of that first short story scene foreshadow actions that are going to happen later on in the story. So we're not surprised. As an audience, we kind of expect these options to pop up, including, the women are intelligent. They have boundaries. They don't just accept. Harry is very much a think on his feet and does not always go according to plan and does not always make the best decisions. It is foreshadowed in that first short story so that we're not surprised later on when this stuff happens again. But I mean, you can really just write the beats out for any of these movies we're talking about. Write the beats out, fill in your own actions, locations, and characters, and readers will be just as happy to read this because it will be a good action adventure story.
Well, let's see. For instance, yeah, there we go. These are the 15 beats of a script. This is not rocket science. Raiders of the Lost Ark followed a similar setup, as did True Lies. Again, if you are struggling to fulfill these beats, then your story still needs work. Now, I'm not saying that these beats are the be-all and end-all, but for a simple, straightforward story like an action adventure, they're a pretty good guide. You can look up online the more detailed explanation of each one of these. Hello, Maggie is back. Glad your power's back, sweetie. Believe me, in this heat, you need electricity. I was getting a little warm. So, but again, you can...
Maggie, we talked about the True Lies, the controversy, and why True Lies is actually very empowering. All the characters have agency. It's not misogynistic, even though, yeah, there is violence against women, but the women then hold their own and do not accept it and retard it. It is not anti-Muslim, because we have characters
on both sides.
On both sides, and we have the positive characters essentially pointing out how this guy is like just making up excuses for his behavior. He is not in any way representative.
Well, some of that was actually the father in that couple that I was talking about.
No, what I mean, like Fazil.
He's like, this is literally Muhammad has said in the Quran. Like, I was like, I know, that's what I thought. You know, like, of like, yeah, you're not supposed to destroy antiquities. Even apparently, it's in the Quran. You're not supposed to, even when maybe you disagree with it. Like, you know, it's like, say, immodest women in the, you know, art, like you're still not supposed to destroy them or change them, because that is a different culture and a past time, and you should preserve it, because this is all about human history. Like that's how it was explained to me. As well as, again, like the violence against women, you're not supposed to kidnap people's daughters, even when you're in a feud with them, even a blood feud. And also, you're definitely not supposed to smuggle a dirty nuclear bomb into a country to set it off. Like he explained, the Quran goes, I'm like, does the Quran really talk about nuclear weapons? He's like, it talks about weapons. Like, you're not supposed to. This is not hospitable. Like, fair. And he liked the movie so much, he was recommending to his brother, and apparently the whole town he was from was gonna watch True Lies. Because again, even the quote unquote sexy scene where Jamie Lee Curtis is supposed to be giving a sexy striptease in order to plant this tracking device by the phone or something, or some type of device. And then she drops it out of her bra. She's trying to be all sexy, trying to pick it up, and it's hilarious. And then when the guy, you know, when this man who she doesn't know is her husband, but this man tries to kiss her, she like upsides him up the head with a telephone. And apparently our Muslim immigrant neighbors were like, yeah, we like that part too. Like, that's right. You don't. A dance is one thing, which, you know, like if you think about belly dancing, culturally, that is perfectly acceptable in many Muslim dominant countries. And it's just considered an art form and not like sexy. And like, she really wasn't doing anything.
And it is not a come on.
Yeah, it's not like an invitation to manhandle the dancer. And so they actually did not find her dance offensive or anything, but they did find it hilarious, like her face as she's trying to like, oh no, I lost my drink, and tried to stuff it back in her breast. They thought that was just hilarious, and they liked that she did not allow herself to be, you know, that she did not just accept the sexual assault.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree. He owes her a lot at the spa. I gotta be honest. Definitely, and Dana too.
But also we brought up the part of where essentially she does not instantly forgive him once she finds out what.
Oh no! Like, he had to save her life several times. Like, not even after the first time, she's still mad. And apparently, the wife of our neighbors, the married couple, were like, I like that she didn't just he had to save her life several times. That's what she told me, was he had to earn it. And I thought they were such an adorable couple telling us about True Life when we're the ones who've been watching it for a couple of years by that point. But yeah, we lent it to them on VHS, partly because we were like, is it us? Are we wrong? Is this anti-Muslim? And they watched it like expecting it to be, mild American anti-Muslim, and they're like, we did not see any anti-Muslim. It's fine.
Because Fazil actually goes in to rescue Dana. Like, he's trusted with a weapon to go rescue her. He is the point person.
And also, like, that again, like, honestly, the villainy of Salim, according to our neighbors, the villainy of Salim, it very much is correct for what is in the Quran. Of like the wealthy have problems with being good, as Salim obviously has lots of money, and that Salim, is out there destroying antiquities and trying to incite wars against countries, which again is definitely not what a good Muslim does. At least, according to our neighbors. And I was like, yeah, that was my understanding as well. And so on, and that also in the movie none of the women are like objectified. They're intelligent, educated women who definitely take care of themselves, but are happy to work with other people, and so on. I'm like, they were like, no, it's a good devout movie. And that's how the village, the town where he's from, was like all watching this movie going, oh, it's a good movie. But anyway, here are the basic beats for this kind of script. In fact, for most scripts, I believe this is based on, what is his name? Snyder's Blake Snyder's beat sheet basic rundown here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've now gone blank on the.
Yeah, I know. I'm trying to click too many things at once, Tom.
Understandable.
Um,
But I'm like, yeah, these beats are very simple, but if you follow them, the reader will be very happy with if they're expecting an action adventure, or as we put early, or a romance, or both. As long as you follow these beats in these movies, they'll be happy. This is the kind of story they're expecting.
So again, and look, these are all available online. A very quick Googling of beat sheets pulled these images up. These are all based on Save the Cat, which again, I am not trying to claim is the be all and end all of story writing. It is not. However, when it comes to action adventure, I really think the Save the Cat beat sheets really do work very well for action adventure, even when you're doing it as a written story and not necessarily as a screenplay.
Yeah.
It's good rails for learning and practicing how to write this. And that's what I am trying to say is try plugging in your action adventure story into this type of setup. No, not that one. So the beat sheet here, the 15 beats, okay, where we start with opening image, our theme statement, setup, catalyst, debate, and so on. Here is another way I found the same thing that's slightly differently worded. The first frame. Look, again, even if you're not writing a screenplay, there's a certain similarity in storytelling. So again, the world around us, the protagonist's introduction, character traits. And again, when we are talking about action adventure, your only opportunity to develop the plot and develop characters is in the beginning. And that the reason why is if you try to do it in the middle of the action, it will slow the whole train down. And nobody's going to want that. And you are so much more likely to have readers DNF. We don't want that. We want people to finish your story.
So you've got two times you can develop character. That very first couple minutes.
Yeah.
And then after the short story When you then go to the main plot, you can build up character right there and give motivations.
Are you talking about the B story?
No, I just mean, so in action adventure, you've got that short story because which will always end with an action, with a major action, and then we begin the rest of the full length story that is
Yes,
now
well,
going
that's
to be.
fun and games. That's where all of this. So your theme statement, where essentially, if you recall, in Raiders of the Lost Ark, they actually go over pretty much the whole plot of what's going to happen, with like a few keepaways, omitted, because how would Dr. Jones know? But essentially, they're going over the majority of the plot in theme statement, and then you have your setup, your catalyst, and the debate. All of that, if you recall, is within the first 20 minutes of Raiders of the Lost Ark. This is also where we find out who Indiana Jones is. This is where we get all of this. We find out we're introduced to Renee Belloc. We are introduced to the concept that the Nazis are, collecting antiquities. I guess because what? They want magic? I don't know.
They're looking for super weapons.
Oh, of course. And like Ark of the Covenant. I maybe I don't know what I'm talking about here, but it just seems like a hard sell that Nazis would want Jewish magic. I'm just saying. Like, given
I mean,
they're so sure they're the superior race, it's hard to buy.
Tato did, like voice that part of like, do we really need to do this Jewish ceremony? This seems really.
I mean, seriously, Belloc in that outfit, like, just oh my god, and it's crooked. It's not even. It's like, what is going on?
And we see the same thing play out in True Lies, where the first, the opening theme, we see this of where he is, he's an intelligence operative who is not afraid to kill people.
Mm-hmm.
And he, goes into very dangerous situations. And he will lie his way through as best he can and, do all of these things to accomplish his goal. And that is what will then play out later, except he will be penalized for how much he lies. And he doesn't like it when other people lie to him. Oh, the irony.
The hypocrisy.
Yes, truly.
Like, if you're a professional liar, are you really surprised when other people lie to you? So, Tom, do you have more to say? Or are we wrapping up? Essentially, are we doing another sprint? Or are we wrapping up?
I think we can do another sprint and talk about.
You have more to talk about?
I feel like because Red, at least we need to talk about, because it's a different keep away game.
Okay.
Than the others. I want to
Sure,
talk about
it
a little
is.
bit.
And I love it. It's one of my comfort watches. So, yes. I like Maggie. The variety of villain groups in the 90s and 2000s was also carried into the whole Manscape adventure book genre. Clancy, Grisham, Cussler, Ludlum, Crichton, etc. Exactly. I think that villains, we need a variety of villains instead of just one big gaping menace.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you can have all sorts of villains. That's actually one of the things I liked about Raiders of the Lost Ark. Like, of course, Nazis, but also Renee Belloc, who was not in any way a known Nazi, although obviously a Nazi collaborator. But like overall, he just, the Nazis were a paycheck. Like, let's be honest, and a means to an end. And that Renee is just merely a rival. And I like that Renee is not, he's not the Darth Vader of archaeology. He's just an academic rival who just really has Indy's number. And Indy just is not being flexible and mixing it up enough. Also, truly, he needs to get over his fear of snakes, apparently.
Another part I like, that that we didn't mention, which is, there are also
Okay.
a lot of little cues throughout the movie of Salim is a truly villainous character, self-serving,
Yes.
that is not necessarily made obvious to people who are outside the know.
Mm-hmm.
And part of that, I think, is because the actor they hired to play him is a Pakistani Muslim actor. And so he knows what actually would make someone truly be a villain
Like,
of this.
yeah, of
And
this like a zealot who is claiming this sort of violence is legitimate, when in fact we on the outside know it's not. Art Malik definitely influenced that character as far as something that his like other Muslims would not have fault with. I liked that quite a bit because I mean I want a good villain. I don't
but
want a paper villain.
and it actually comes back to um the annoyance we feel in a lot of movies when they hire actors to play characters that they have no basis in.
Oh
So
God.
like, hence why there's a lot of complaint about non-Jewish women playing Jewish female characters in movies, because you then see these characters doing things Jewish women never would if you were raised Jewish. Of
Mm-hmm.
like, and like, it's one thing if the writer doesn't know this and the director, but that's essentially where the actor comes in of going, no, this is not how this character be, or we have to write in a
Mm-hmm.
discussion point to explain why
Yeah.
this variance. The same for an African American. It's one thing for them to play an African American character, but if they're supposed to be playing a Nigerian character, that's a
Mm-hmm.
very different culture.
It is.
And what they would find acceptable and not acceptable in behaviors, even in foods and manners, are going to be different. And so it
Mm-hmm.
helps to actually have someone there to explain and make sure it is addressed in the story,
Yes.
versus that means anyone who does know those cultures, when they see this, are immediately ripped out of their suspension of disbelief.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I remember all of the tirades Glory had upon watching Magical Beasts, because these characters are supposed to be specifically New York Jewish women, and they in no way act like it. This is an absolute travesty, even like literally acting against what their cultural upbringing would be. And there's no reason or explanation given. It's just
Mm-hmm.
isn't it perfectly normal? No, it's not normal. They are breaking
Mm-hmm.
so many conventions of morality of
Mm-hmm.
their time and culture that there is a lot of problems here.
Yeah.
And
Like
so,
they're not good people and they're doing this. And they are being coded as good witches, but they are not acting good according to the culture that they claim to have been raised in. This is a problem. This is a serious problem. And nobody talks about it. Nobody is, to this day, I'm still mad about it. I'm still salty. I'm salty that Helen Mirren's playing Golden Mare and she's doing a terrible job. Just from the trailer alone, I'm ticked off about it. She obviously has no idea.
because yeah, like, what does an Australian know?
Oh, I thought Helen Mirren was from the UK.
Oh no, you're right. Yeah, she travels. She lived in Australia. That's why I keep getting confused, because her early career was mostly Australian movies.
Mm-hmm. All right, we're going to take a little breaky break. What a great time to make sure you have a snack, something to drink. And when we come back, we're going to talk about Red, a third kind of action adventure that Tom wants to talk about. And of course, it's one of my comfort watches, so I'll have plenty to say. We'll see y'all in a few minutes. Me, me, me. Me, 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 me. Me, 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 me. Hello.
By the way, I did finally realize when realizing Maggie was a bit behind of that's what this is referencing to, of how do those two keep in such good shape if they're supposed to be office workers?
Yeah.
Anger workouts. Look, sometimes I just can't even picture how the word's spelled when I'm trying to say it.
It's okay.
Just had a lot of extra S's and V's in it. In my pronunciation. But yeah, so going on to the next one of why I want to talk about red is, to me, red is the third kind of action adventure story plot. As we discussed, I mean, the actual plot structure, they're all going to be the same. But Indiana Jones is about the possession of an object. It is about the Ark. And it goes back and forth who possesses it, who has control of it. And that is what drives the story. In True Lies, the possession control is actually the knowledge of where is Salim and his weapons. And essentially, it's a cat and mouse game. That is what True Lies is. It's, another classic cat and mouse. And red, to me, is the third kind of action adventure, which I would just simply call safety. And it is where the main character has safety, they then lose it, and they're now trying to regain it permanently, and they keep temporarily gaining safety and then losing it again. And I appreciate red. Oh yeah. Of most of our friends, I could definitely most easily see you being in red. Compared to most people we know. Yeah, you would fit right in, especially with Helen Mirren. I could definitely see you being neighbors and friends with her. But while death is definitely a possibility in this story, how do you have your character repeatedly lose their safety without dying? And I think red does that very well. Yes, I feel like they took notes from the audience of no, we need more Ivan and Victoria together.
Yes, his little snow bunny.
I love when your toes just crunch together before you shoot. I mean, their flirting is just so cute and obnoxious. But yeah, like, people don't always consider it, but the way you keep your audience enjoying the full story in a safety action adventure is you have to know how to let them lose their safety without it being unrealistic. Of what a weird way that they coincidentally survived this when they should be dead. Versus we see with Frank and what's his name?
John Malkovich's character?
Yeah, John Malkovich's paranoid character. Of the reason that they survive all these is because they are paranoid, but in different ways, and they know how to react in different ways. Yes. I love that, Maggie. Victoria and I would have tea. She would arrange the flowers and tea, and I would make the scones and cookies.
Marvin. That's the John
Marvin, yeah. True love is not murdering the one you love, but making it look convincing.
Yeah.
I mean, that is an amazing grouping on somebody who's going to be moving once they're hit on the first one. But yeah, so I want to say like there's a lot of options for action adventure stories.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and as we see in all of these, there is a certain amount of romance because romance stories are told with the same beats of where we have two opposing forces and one has to approach the other to then try to take away or to gain something. And we see it play back and forth, and you can even have this mirrored if you have both action adventure and romance elements. Hence we see, what was it, the run to vulnerability?
Well, that's in the second movie.
Yes.
Run for emotional safety.
Emotional safety. Yeah, unlike a lot, Red and Red 2 are a great pair to watch together. Like they really do continue one story and show how these characters fully grow to be good partners with each other. Because the Red shows how they start together and what really brings them together, and Red 2 shows how they cement that relationship. And it also shows that you can split up your story. Red unto itself is a good story you can watch on its own. It doesn't have to have a sequel. Red 2 is a great sequel because it continues the story in a satisfying way where the characters keep growing. It does not stagnate them or require them to be reset to where they were at the beginning of the first story or anything. It just actually continues it on. Which is something the other ones we talk about had bigger problems with.
Yes.
Of making sequels. Of like, yeah, we don't really talk about Temple of Doom.
Yeah.
That was
so cringe.
That is so many different problems.
So much cringe. Blech. No.
I mean, I do like the defense of Marvin that the CIA was in fact lacing.
I mean, he's doing great considering 12 years of LSD Lacey every day. Like, yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot for anyone's brain.
I'm like, yeah, no, in that case, he's doing great.
He vacuumed because her living room was messy.
But I mean, but yeah, like, but again, we're seeing where Frank is actually very controlling. He has a real problem being vulnerable. He is caring. I mean, he definitely has a very strong parental need.
But on the inside, he's all gooey, as several of his friends and former coworkers point out to him of, you're all crusty on the outside, but inside you're real gooey.
Yeah, Maggie said, Frank's so vulnerable and he gets hurt, puppy look, when Sarah says or does something, but then he just kills a guy or 10. I'm like, yeah, he definitely has, emotional.
He actually handled Sarah's comment about his lack of hair pretty well, actually. Because, so many men, fragile masculinity. Versus, there is no debating it. He don't have much hair. Okay? Like, other men have lush heads, and he is not among them. And, she's upset. She is definitely not happy with the kidnapping. And then being drugged by somebody else who's after Frank. Like, she has valid reasons to be ticked off.
And then dragged across state lines.
Right? Dragged across many state lines. She wakes up, she fell asleep in New Orleans. She wakes up in New York. And yeah, she's like, I was hoping you'd have hair, but it turns out nobody's getting their wishes today. And then, and he's cool about that of like, yeah, I don't have the hair. It's true. And so she then, gives him a little something with not my best date ever, but not my worst. This is not actually the worst date she's ever had, which is showing that, she is able to see that these are extenuating circumstances.
Yeah.
And also, like later, as they point out, as Marvin points out to Frank, women tend to not stay if they don't want to stay. They leave. They find a way out. Okay? But Sarah stays because she likes you.
And so again, we have Also, it's another great movie for showing agency for all characters.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we definitely have a few scenes of misogynistic characters, but the story is not misogynistic.
Mm-hmm.
Of again noting that difference, and that sometimes is lost on people, of just because you're showing the reality of the world they are living in does not mean your story is saying that this is the way it should be or is promoting
Mm-hmm.
it as, preferred way for the world.
Mm-hmm.
And they definitely, Red gets the sass very well, of using it as a running commentary so the audience feels included, that their thoughts are being addressed,
Mm-hmm.
and also to bring in the levity of like, these are very stressful. You have to give people a breather.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I will always love the line, "You don't give a kitten a loaded gun."
Again, that's from Red too.
Uh, uh,
It's like you didn't watch the movie.
it's more like I fell asleep, and I guess I woke up watching in more into Red 2 than I realized.
You are that student. You realize that, right? You are that student. Stick to the assignment. Yes, it is very telling about her life. I mean, we saw that guy that she came into her house from her date with. He's like, but I bought you dinner. Like, wow. Excuse me, buying dinner does not, obligate you to anyone inviting you into their home. What the hell?
Yeah. But on the other hand, we also see the way she acts and what happens with the EMT,
Mm-hmm.
where he just seems like a very nice, enthusiastic person, but then he's actually incredible danger of like,
Yeah, he strong arms her and then, drugs her.
the people of Moldova. The dead man, right? But yeah, I feel like it's also a good progression to understand. Indiana Jones is a great way to truly see the basic bare bones elements
Mm-hmm. Yes.
if you're having a hard time understanding the components that make an action adventure.
Mm-hmm.
True Lies is a more nuanced um, structure, but still in a basic action adventure.
Mm-hmm.
And then Red is definitely the most developed and definitely has had the most revisions to the story done, of where they've tried to just pack in as much enjoyment and enjoyable elements into the story as they can,
Mm-hmm.
and showing what a lot of editing and refining a story can do for it if you do it with planning.
Mm-hmm.
You can get to Red. But I think it would be hard for someone just coming into understanding stories to plot structure out the basic elements of action adventure with Red. And so that's also why it's like Red is like a good appetizer before the really good meal.
That's why Tom keeps quoting Red too.
Yeah.
We know what Tom and Maggie like.
Yeah, Red is a good way to see the difference between the person and the job in a character.
Mm-hmm.
Of where, yeah, Frank is very gruff on the outside and very good at his job, but that is not who he is as a character.
Oh no, he's gushy on the inside. He's a romantic.
He also wants to be accepted by those around him.
Mm-hmm.
We see that in part at the beginning with the little nod to when he's taking out the trash and he
Mm-hmm.
notices the rest of the neighborhood has Christmas decorations up and he has none. So the next thing he does is he gets and puts up an entire lawn of Christmas decorations because he wants to belong and be part of this.
Or at
He
least
doesn't.
blend in.
Yeah.
I'm still like, in what world did they think no one would notice what a wet team went in the middle of the night and shot so many bullets into this house, it collapsed. Like, you can't claim that was a tornado. Like, the other people in the neighborhood heard the bullet. It's not like they were even using silencers. But anyway, I'm totally fine.
Yeah, versus, Maggie brings up, problem in a lot of them is, a lot of action movies and books, the job and the person are the same.
Yes.
The job defines them, and there is no other character building of what makes the character, and makes character very flat.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, we see that in Indiana Jones.
Yes.
Of where he is mostly defined by his job.
He is. He's not a very good professor. And quite honestly, he's not that good of an archaeologist. He's a raider. He is a thief masquerading as an academic, and he's not good at academia. Again, like, it's questionable. Really makes sense why Army intelligence went to him. Because I'm sure they were turned down 30 times before they got to him.
Mm-hmm.
Because everybody else is like, I'm not fighting the Nazis for whatever artifact you want. Are you kidding?
And the same we see for Harry Tasker in True Lies, who is mostly defined by his job to the neglect of his family.
He is not reading anything. He has no side interests or like things. Like, seriously, Harry Tasker, of all the characters that we've discussed today, I would expect Harry Tasker, frankly, to be a World War II buff. And like in his home, like in his personal office, he's got like all these beautiful lithographs, framed lithographs of various ships or planes or something from World War II. Like, this is what I would expect. But instead, Harry has zero hobbies. He has zero side interests, nothing. And he just sells software, which we're never even quite sure what kind of software it is. They don't go into it. His wife don't care. They really work hard to do zero character development for Harry. And in fact, one of the very few times we see anything about Harry is him stalking his wife with federal resources. So we see that he's a bit controlling. And we see that his daughter is starting to catch on to his BS.
Yeah. Versus Indy is a lucky Tomb Raider who has a job in academia to give himself the credentials to stay out of prison.
Yeah.
Because it's truly, why are you robbing that fertility idol at the beginning anyway?
It's not even supposedly part of his purview. Most archaeologists are not interested in archaeology in a general sense. They are specifically like interested and studied like one historical time period and people. Like,
hence
archaeology
Skinner.
Definitely branches off from anthropology. But it's like historical anthropology is what archaeology is. Even in the 30s, it was still more of that. Like, hence the whole Egyptologist, which is hilarious if you think about what are you implying. But that's like being Americanologist. Like, really? Is that a thing? The real archaeologist. Yes, I agree. Professor Joe, yeah, his father is. So, but what I was trying to get at is in action adventure, there is a time for character development, and it is in the beginning, early on. And that's pretty much the only time you're really going to get to do much character development. So make it count. Hence, in Red, we actually do see a whole bunch of character development. We learn a lot about Frank, and we learn quite a bit about Sarah. And then because Frank worked with Marvin and Victoria and what is Morgan Freeman's character? And Joe and all these other characters, we do learn a little bit about their work. I said Victoria.
Oh, yeah. Right.
We learn a bit about his back history. And it's kind of interesting because technically he worked with some people that they don't really quite remember each other very well. Hence, Gabriel Singer, who flew a package out, which was a person. Like, yes, they technically work together. They don't really remember each other because they weren't really working together in this one incident. But we do learn a little bit about Frank's work history through William Cooper's research of Frank in conversation with the records keeper. Also known in the library land as an archivist, but okay, records keeper. Like, what the fuck? It's fine. It's totally fine. Don't call an archivist a records keeper to their face. I'm just saying.
They
You'll
will
want to get a
destroy your
mug.
entire history, and you will never get another loan again. They take it personally.
Mm-hmm. But we do learn a bit about Frank's work history, which is not his only character, but because he devoted himself to his work, we do understand that a lot of his time was spent in his job, and that is why he doesn't really have hobbies. And this is the problem. Of course, we see in Red 2, he's trying to develop some DIY hobbies, and he's not doing a great job. Hence why Sarah's not really thrilled about his cooking or grilling, and I don't blame her.
But we do see, even in the first one, how much he likes to clean, and that is how he cleans to deal with his anxiety. Whenever he
We know
gets nervous,
people
he
like
starts
that.
cleaning. Yeah. And yeah, thanks to the other people, we get not only his background, but like through Victoria, we also get some of his mentality of
Since
why she's willing to trust him is because she has worked enough with him that she knows what makes him tick, and so she can then inform Sarah as well this information. Which is, yeah, he cares deeply and he doesn't want to show it because it is a real danger in his job.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a problem for him and always has been. But he uses that very same vulnerability of the way he cares as his sort of ace in the hole of how he converts and flips. Who's the agent out to kill him, played by our
William
favorite
Cooper.
Agent Cooper, of, through his family. Of like, I care about Sarah, Cooper must care about his family. Let me go there, and then maybe I can get him to pause long enough to actually talk to him through his training to just pursue me. Of like, they actually have commonality, and that's how they are able to communicate with each other.
Mm-hmm.
And we are not entirely surprised by this because of the earlier drinking with Ivan, when Frank and Ivan reveal how much that they have both flipped agents for the other person's team,
Mm-hmm.
and that a good friend of theirs is actually alive. Of like, this is, they don't like to always kill. They are not.
Mm-hmm.
They don't view killing as the best option. They prefer to convert over and gain new tools. And so it's not that surprising when then he goes to the other guy's family and essentially threatens them and then gets him to talk with him that way.
Now I want to point out Hannah's from Red 2. Both of you. Both you and Maggie. Seriously, you have a problem.
We do.
You two are
But I mean, it
definitely.
is so rare that the sequel is actually an improvement
Yes,
on
that
the
is.
story and the characters.
Also, what I like about Red and Red 2 is such good ensemble cast that really work well together. People are not scene stealing. They are all like seasoned actors. They're sharing the scenes, and so it's made better by all of these people working together, and I do love it. Again, why Red and Red 2 are my comfort watches.
Even Richard Dreyfuss, I
Oh,
swear,
God.
doing his, reviving his impression of a South American dictator from Moon Over Parador. Like, you can't convince me his arms dealer idea is not what he's...
Him doing Roberto?
Yes.
Oh, God. Like, its face needs to be slapped. I'm so glad when Morgan Freeman does it. Like, yes. It's a fun movie to watch. It's very enjoyable. And I do like that it essentially takes the idea of in True Lies of where is Celine, and it now does it from the other perspective of the one being hunted, trying to stay away, trying to play keep away while they figure out the plot of why are you being chased? I don't know. We've done so many crimes. Let's see which one this is.
And yeah, and there are so many more options, but yeah, like, it is such a great ensemble that they don't try to steal the scenes from each other. They are just trying to have fun together, and so you can enjoy all of it. And all of them are developed. Like, they all actually develop the characters. Marvin is even developed as much as he would in most stories be a one-note, crazy Marvin.
Yes.
But no, a lot of the times his paranoia is accurate.
Mm-hmm. He's very competent. It is a wonderful film of competent people.
Like, I like that they show that for all his paranoia, he is often right. Like, when he threatens at the airport the woman with "Who do you work for?" He's like, "No, she's been following us." And then we later see her show up.
Yeah.
As, oh no, she is.
Yep, Marvin was right.
And we see this multiple times where, yes, Marvin is paranoid, but Marvin is not wrong for being paranoid.
Mm-hmm.
Because again, like, they tend to play these off as one notes in a lot of, lesser refined stories.
Mm-hmm.
Versus here, they are all developed. Even, Cooper is developed as much as, like, he seems like a real cold-blooded killer.
Or a himbo.
And yeah, a bit of a himbo. I do appreciate the gender flip on that one with his boss literally calling him a pretty face. That's why she keeps him around.
Look, as she points out, he got his butt handed to him by a retiree in the Pentagon. Like, excuse me, how does this work? Or Langley. They were at Langley.
Yeah.
And it's like, excuse me, sir, you got outclassed and you've done a terrible job. Now go fix it.
But yeah, them willing to play with all of these roles. Like, it adds to it instead of just reinforcing negative stereotypes. They flip them and make them bring meaning, which I appreciate. And then it goes even further in Red 2. And you see, like, the popular movies, have continued that. I mean, as Maggie brings up, look at John Wick 4 with John and Shimaza. They don't want to kill each other, but it's a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Of the part where the audience knows what the possibilities are, but they're not sure how it's going to work out, is what keeps them invested and interested.
Mm-hmm.
No one likes a complete surprise. That's not what they're reading the story for. They're reading the story for this style of story. I mean, if the only thing, one thing I will say, Glory, though, has brought to my attention that I feel like we could bring a lot more surprise in our stories with, is the love triangle just goes and becomes a throuple. Just accepting that it doesn't have to be an either-or option. There are ways to make this all work together, because often, even in love triangles, even in classic story love triangles, what each person appreciates about the other people is not the same.
Mm-hmm.
So it is not that there is a loss with one or the other. It's just which are they less attached to is the point of love triangles in classic stories versus in a throuple. It's like, oh, well, we can get this all to work out because we're not saying one has to prioritize the other. And in modern times, like, that is definitely a good option. I mean, it was in the 70s. Let's bring it back.
All right, what else do you want to talk about?
Real quick, Romancing the Stone
Mm-hmm.
is an action as Gloria, what'd you bring up?
Just because it has romance in the title doesn't mean it's an actual real primary romance. It's not a primary romance genre. It's an action adventure with a B plot of romance, which is valid.
And the romance is very much the B plot. It is not what drives any of the story through.
No.
Other than the B plot helps take the A plot over the top.
A giant emerald the size of my lady fist is what drives the plot. Mwah! No notes. Again, another comfort watch.
But essentially, at the end, having to make the decision between which does he care more about.
And I mean, like, a good reasonable person should always care about people more than gemstones or things in general. Now, that alligator, that was a beautiful alligator. We must admit, like, let us put credit where credit is due. They cast a gorgeous alligator. I know alligators. I have been to many private zoos filled with alligators, and I'm here to tell you that was the most beautiful alligator I've ever seen. That was a great looking alligator.
But yeah, just because the
it was
word
very well fed. Like, you could tell that alligator was used to humans and understood, wait your turn. I will give you your food in a minute. Like, that alligator had manners because he was very well trained.
But yeah, just because romance is in the title does not actually mean it is a romance of, like, it is primarily an action adventure.
Mm-hmm.
But romance can be woven into it, as we said with all these other stories, because it uses the same beats.
Yeah,
the
and like
feeling is the same.
There is nothing wrong with essentially having your primary genre story, and then your B plot is a different genre story. So like, let us say you want action adventure as your A plot, and you want romance as your B plot, or you want fantasy as your B plot, or you want sci-fi as your B. You can do any and all of the above. And essentially, to some degree, Raiders of the Lost Ark actually did a fantasy B plot. Like, it has both. I mean, like, it's barely a romance. Like, I'm sorry, but like, seriously, these guys were not into the romance.
There is no chemistry.
Spielberg, Lucas, Kaufman, and Lawrence, like whatever Kasdan.
Lawrence
Kasdan. These four men, none of them apparently were really into romance. And yet they felt like, well, if we're going to sell it to the studio, we have to make a romance.
If anything, there would be more believable romance between Belloc and Marion.
I mean, you know what? All right, but now that you say it, I want a romance between Belloc and Indy. Smush. We came to smash. Yeah. Anyway.
Although, yes, Maggie, good points about the boots were really nice.
Weren't those gorgeous boots?
And a lot of nice gator steaks.
It's about men's accessories.
I mean, because that gator was not working for that food.
That gator was so well fed. That gator was like a family heirloom that they kept. Yeah. But like, really, Indiana Jones, the B plot, if anything, or really, I guess the A plot. It's an action adventure with a subgenre of fantasy.
Yeah.
Because you don't get ghosts coming out and making people's faces melt and it not be fantasy. I mean, I still remember that as a child going, wait, how did ghosts make somebody's face melt? How does that even work? And Dad's like, I don't know.
I'd say, if anything, that would be the real criticism, is the fantasy element is not foreshadowed any other point in that story. Of, like, they should have done a little bit of fantasy maybe in the in the tomb at the very beginning of it. And at least then we would know that there's some magic in this world.
Yes. Yes. They really, that was the real problem, was they didn't do foreshadowing of that. And so it comes as kind of an abrupt surprise. Like that Indy knows, Marion, close your eyes. But we as the audience don't know. Yeah, no, seriously, I think it would have made both of these men go good if they had the arms of each other to sleep in, and then they would have, done good things in the world. Because finally somebody would tame each of them.
Yes, truly. But Marion, I think wouldn't have been as would be more believable if Marion just had them both as like a little duo.
So Maggie, in the original story that they were working on, Marion was supposed to have gone into a relationship with Indiana Jones when she was 12, and he was like in his mid-20s. It was so super gross. And Spielberg said she's going to have to be older. That is what Spielberg said while they were like actually working out the beats of the story. So, no, it was always toxic and it was always super gross, and he definitely deserved a real good, swift punch to the face.
Yes.
And honestly, if Abner had been alive, I would have expected Abner, her father, to also have done the same, because this was never okay.
But also to go back to the romance in Romancing the Stone was also pretty toxic, but it is a way to show that they both, the reason it works in the end is that they softened each other. They brought the better elements out of each other, which is why it ended up being believable. These are two very rough characters that don't really like people in general. They are both, incredibly introverted and antisocial.
Right.
And they
Which is not to
bring
say that
sociability out of
can't
each other.
fall in love together. But, if you both don't like people, how does that, then you've got to really have a lot of shared interests. And he was definitely not an avid romance reader. So, and she really didn't seem to have any other hobbies. Like, her hobbies seem to be cats, drinking airplane bottles of liquor alone with her cat, and writing cheesy romance novels. Are you done pandering, Tom?
I think so. Also, I think that's most of the stories we really wanted to talk about.
Let's see. There's The Incredibles and Dungeons and Dragons: Honor Among Thieves.
Dungeons and Dragons was surprisingly watchable.
But again, that is for the most part a keep away object kind of action adventure.
And Incredibles is a safety one.
Yes. With an incredible body count.
I mean, wow, a lot of people die in that movie.
On a remote volcanic island.
But yeah, they do show that you can have action adventure mixed with any other genre you want, but you do need to figure out which is the main one to figure out how you plot it.
Mm-hmm.
So Incredibles has fantasy through the superhero stuff.
Yes.
But it is an action adventure story first, so it is plotted as an action adventure.
Mm-hmm.
And you have the fantasy elements and the fantasy arc, with all the kids developing their powers and learning how to use them, very much as a B plot to even a C plot, compared to the main story of safety and security and the choices they have to make. You still there, Gloria?
I'm still here.
Okay. You didn't move for a moment, so I was wondering. And in D&D, again, it's in a fantasy realm. It has fantasy options.
But it is an action adventure story with the B plot being fantasy. About a man with a history of abandoning his mixed race daughters. Highly recommend Honest Trailers take on Dungeons and Dragons Honor Among Thieves? No notes.
Well, it's more of, Maggie, that Incredibles is a kids' cartoon movie.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I'm more surprised of. Like, this is a Pixar, cartoon for kids movie. And like we know specifically that in these devices there are people and how many times they die. You don't die, your entire, your vehicle exploding and falling several hundred feet.
Well, also we have confirmation as he's looking up all of his essentially colleagues and seeing that they were terminated and by which version of this machine. And what's more concerning is various governments not being worried about the disappearance of these weaponized people.
Yeah.
Like, they should honestly be concerned that, because they don't have a body count, they don't have bodies to go, okay, well, they're dead. They should be worried that, like, these people are amassing a revolt, because that is a concern. And something they don't ever talk about in the movie is that it is within each government's best interest to keep placing these various superheroes in regular jobs and setting them up so they'll be happy. So again, they don't band together and revolt because they are powerful enough that they could do revolts. They could do revolutions without anyone's help because they are weapons. And they are, for the most part, very intelligent weapons.
And I just like that part of the only reason Mr. Incredible, the one in the first time, survives the first time is because it wasn't supposed to target him yet. Like, it wasn't, specified to him.
Mm-hmm.
Again, we show that Mr. Incredible isn't unique or special.
Mm-hmm.
He's lucky.
Mm-hmm.
He is lucky and knows how to use his luck to survive. I don't even know how to take that hot take.
I'm just saying, Chris, what's going on? But yes, highly recommend the Honest Trailers take on Dungeons and Dragons Honor Among Thieves. Highly recommend. I've been teasing Tom with this for weeks.
You know what's really weird is it's nice to see Mattel finally getting people to write decent versions of their IPs. Like I watched, the Transformers Rise of the Beast or Maximals or whatever one, and it's a decent 80s, 90s style Transformers movie. Like, it's not a great movie, it's a kids movie, but still, I mean, Barbie's now hit 1 billion. And
Mm-hmm.
like, it'd be nice to see them. I am still worried about how they're going to turn Uno into a movie.
Talk about one high stakes card game. Do you think Uno is going to become poker for Gen Alpha?
Oh no, I figure it's going to be like Yu-Gi-Oh, where they have actual powers on people.
Oh, okay.
Because the one thing everyone wants to see with an Uno movie
Mm-hmm.
is reverse.
Yes. So yeah, but that was really more my take on The Incredibles. Was they weren't talking about what I kind of thought they were going to talk about, and instead, if anything, they were normalizing an incredible amount of violence, which was frankly a little concerning for a children's movie.
Yeah.
Like, if it had been for adults, honestly, John Wick, like, okay, I mean, it's not necessarily my bag, but it's cool. But for children, I really wasn't expecting them to normalize that level of violence, I don't know. It just, I think they got in under the wire just because so many elements of the movie were just plain old fun. But like the conversation that the Helen, the mother, has with her two children about this is not like cartoons. These people are not going to, not be as violent with you because you're children. So you have to be careful and run away. Like, that was harsh. Like, I'm not saying she was wrong, but that is scary as hell. And again, that is okay in an adult movie, but gosh, that is some dark shit for a children's movie. Of course, then, we all were traumatized by Toy Story 3 and 4. So, yeah. Dark times at Pixar. Uno the Emojis Movie Part 2 or a death game Uno, I'm not. Why? Why so dark, Noah? Why you gotta why?
I think I fell asleep or I just didn't finish, Maggie.
I don't even know this movie, and apparently I don't want to.
Oh yeah. They combined Transformers with Arthurian legend. It was bad.
Okay. Anyway.
It was, yeah, true. It's a travesty. That's what I was like. I wasn't interested in ever seeing again, just hearing the story plot out for Extinction. I'm just like, I don't ever want to see another Transformers movie. That's an awful thought. No.
All right, Tom, final thoughts. Wrap it up.
If you really want to write a story, if you want to see how to do it, but you're not that skilled yet, or you see like this is gonna be difficult for you, action adventure is a great beginner level genre to use because so much of the elements are already plotted out, and you just have to fill in that part of the story. It doesn't require as much creativity of just figuring out how to get the story to work as many other genres do.
I think the one thing to remember with action adventure is you got to keep the momentum going once you get it going. So again, remember, in your first couple beats, is the time you have to essentially tell your readers what the approximately most of the plot is going to be, not the finale, but what is like essentially the middle part going to be. Tell them what the plot is. And then also, this is your time to do character development. It honestly does not take that many scenes to do character development. You really just need your main characters to have conversations with each other and possibly a few other people. That's all that's necessary for them to really show who they are. Revision is your best friend here. And beyond that, it's about keeping once you've done you've told the audience, your readers, your plot, and you've done a little bit of character development, then it is time to get that train going, trying to get that momentum, and then you keep the momentum following the beats. Just try it out. Nobody is perfect at this. The first couple times they do this, but the more you practice the 10 to 15 beat structure, depending on how you want to do it, you'll be fine. It's a lot of fun. And it's a great way to, like, maybe you want to add momentum to a genre that is not necessarily known for it. Contemporary, you could add action. Fantasy, you can add action. A sci-fi space opera with action. Like, you can just add an action adventure to any other genre. Good times. Everybody's done it. Everybody's done it. No matter what you are mixing together with action adventure, someone has done it before you. And more than likely, they've even made a couple movies about it. So you can honestly just go watch that and see how other people done it and see, do you like it that way? Do you want to mix it a different way? That is entirely within, your options. But I definitely think it's a useful skill for writers, even those who don't think, oh, I'm not a genre writer, Chloe. Yes, but maybe you need the practice. Give it a try. If it is uncomfortable, that is how you know you have room to grow.
Hey, Spence.
Hello. So that would be my final thoughts on this. But again, follow the beat sheets. You're doing fine. And have a good time. Action adventure is probably one of the easiest, most straightforward to follow the beat sheet. And you go and you really could just plug it in. So I do recommend everybody give it a try. Yes, make your own genre smoothie. Delicious.
And there's something to be said for the nice part about using writing genre, especially action adventure genre, is you will have a full coherent story when you finish. And it's
Mhm.
something anyone can go along with and read and understand, and they will enjoy. And that helps with the motivation later on when you're writing more difficult stories that you may have to, come up with more original ideas for.
Also remember my rule of thumb with all plots. They have to be easy to follow for the exhausted and or intoxicated. If they are too confusing for readers to follow, you are more than likely going to have your story DNF'd. And we don't want that. We want readers to read all the way through. And so you've got to make this simple and foreshadowed enough that the drunk and exhausted can still follow along. So let's be honest, most people are really tired. It's, you know how you hear punch drunk? Kind of, like people who they're not actually intoxicated, but they're so tired, it's like they're intoxicated. Excuse me. So again, like most people, most readers are really tired or they're very distracted, which is like another form of intoxication. I'm just saying.
But
So,
also, your readers are going to put down the story and they're going to come back and they're going to forget some of the details.
mhm.
And if they have to have all the details just to make sense, then they're eventually going to get exhausted having to reread and go back to figure out parts.
So again, you want to foreshadow the main part of your plot, not the finale, but the main part, the meat and potatoes of your plot. You want to foreshadow that all at the beginning so that they can not only follow along, but also so they can get that dopamine hit because they'll be like, okay, this is what I think is going to happen. And then when it happens, they get dopamine. Versus if you then do a switcheroo on them, they're not going to get that dopamine. You deprive them, and they're like, but do I really want to keep reading it since obviously I'm confused about what's going to happen next? Mm-hmm. Okay. So remember, you're writing for the exhausted, the distracted, and the intoxicated. And foreshadowing is your friend. There's no need to keep your plot secret from your reader till like halfway or 2/3 through the story. No, you can absolutely tell them at the beginning. And it's still a fun ride. Action adventure proves this point. So give it a try.
Have fun. That's why the summer blockbusters are often action adventure because everyone enjoys them. There's something for everyone. You can put elements in from any other genre pretty much you like, and
Mm-hmm.
people still enjoy it.
Mm-hmm. Very true. It's a good time. You feel that energy. It's good. It's fun. That's why people like it. That's why it's like a good, solid return on investment. So even readers like it. Is like, oh, we're gonna get a little adventure, a little excitement in our lives.
And even if you don't develop the characters much, people still have fun. Of like that's kind of what we're showing with Raiders of the Lost Ark and True Lies. Of
Mm-hmm.
these characters, we don't see a lot of background. They're not, truly. They do not have, depths of the ocean to them.
No, they're
But we
they're
still,
shallow puddles of men.
yeah, but we still enjoy them for the story and the
Mm-hmm.
adventure.
Yes.
And that is the beauty of it. Even if you don't have all of these skills down, you can practice all of them and you'll still have a story people enjoy reading and
Mm-hmm.
tell you they enjoy it and they would like more.
Mm-hmm.
And it keeps you motivated to write more stories.
But also, again, Not only are you writing for the distracted, the exhausted, and the inebriated, but again, if you're not having fun, you're not doing it right. So make sure you're having a good time. If you have a good time, more than likely, at least some of your readers are going to have a good time. And that's the point. Readers are there to have a fun time. So, on that note, what to expect for next Monday's episode. So, next Monday, Tom and I will be on the road to Chicago. We will be pre-recording an episode for Monday this week. What will it be about? What will we be premiering on Monday while we ourselves are literally driving through Illinois when the episode premieres? The Wonderful World of Ralph Bakshi, the animator and filmmaker.
Who definitely uses animation to tell mature, adult-oriented stories. While they're animated, they are not meant for kids.
Mm-hmm.
These are stories meant to communicate ideas to other adults. And he does it very interestingly.
What is interesting is Ralph Bakshi has influenced like generations, multiple generations of animators, including people who've made films like The Incredibles. Literally, he's trained them, and then they've gone on to make different filmmakers have made Pixar movies and Disney movies because he's trained so many animators, and even the ones he hasn't trained, he is so heavily influenced. So many. So the movies that we are going to focus on will include Fritz the Cat, which I think was like the largest grossing independent animated film in American history.
Mm-hmm.
To this day. So there's Fritz the Cat. Ralph Bakshi did a version of Lord of the Rings, Part 1. He never made Part 2. That's a whole nother matter. The interesting film Coonskin, American Pop. We may talk about Wizards, but we may instead talk about Heavy Traffic. I don't know. We're still discussing. And of course, the infamous Cool World, which was, however, marketed, unfortunately, at children. So, because we were part of the kids that was marketed to that, going, wait, what is happening? Which I don't think he wanted it marketed at kids. But we're going to talk about The Wonderful World of Ralph Bakshi, a very interesting and groundbreaking animation filmmaker, and his influence on not just American filmmaking, but really global filmmaking and animation, as well as live action filmmaking. So he has definitely influenced so much of modern media. He is somebody worth talking about.
The look of Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings was heavily influenced by Ralph Bakshi's Lord of the Rings movie.
So that's what we're going to talk about. Yeah, Cool World's not for children, yet in the early 90s it was marketed to children, so that was a wild ride. But we hope you will join us. Hopefully we will have Wi-Fi and we can join you in the chat when it premieres. And we will be in Chicago next week. So I have no idea what's going to happen. It's just all chaos all week. That is the only thing I can be sure of. So with that, I shall wave you all off and say good night. Mwah, mwah, adieu. See you next time.